you a fan of old school haunted house movies like The Changeling? If that's a yes, then you may want to check out The Inhabitants. This is a 2015 movie directed and written by Michael and Sean Rasmussen. At least that's how I hope you say your name, because I've probably completely butchered that. Anyway, like I said, this is a very much of a callback to movies like things like The Changeling. And it focuses on a young couple. They've bought this kind of out-of-the-way bed and breakfast in New England somewhere. And it's basically an old house around 300 or so years old. And it's a living job, so they basically move in there. And as you probably expect, this house has a dark past, which they discover, obviously, throughout the movie. And things almost immediately kind of take a turn for the dark as this sort of strange things start to happen, visions, sounds, weird things going on basically. And as the movie unravels, we discover this what's actually the history of the house and obviously the hauntings, the who's haunting it, etc. It also has a kind of a voyeuristic sort of element to the movie as well, which I shall kind of touch on again. And basically, like I said, it really plays like an older movie in the fact that the way that it's set up is very much a slow burn. Actually, quite a lot like Dark Feed. So these guys actually made Dark Feed, which I really enjoyed. Actually, in fact, I put it on my top 10 movies that you should that you may not have seen. So it kind of plays in a way similar to that. Now that had a very kind of a slow build, and it kind of was basically a movie which is much more about atmosphere and the kind of this tension building. And this is probably the same, because this is not a kind of a kind of gory film or loads of kind of like, you know, flashy effects. There's probably more effects here than I would say on Dark Feed, but it is really a kind of slow burn, this movie. So we'll go through the kind of the positives and negatives with this movie. So like I said, we'll start with the positives first of all. So if you're all about atmosphere, then this is going to be a movie for you, because it does build on this very kind of creepy atmosphere with the kind of the tension kind of building throughout the film basically. But they don't skimp out on I think supernatural things that are happening. Some of these films I feel sometimes can be a little sparse with a kind of like supernatural things that go on. This actually does have quite a lot. So there's pretty much, you know, every kind of 5-10 minutes basically there'll be something that's basically happening. It might be something more off screen, but there will be. It's not a kind of film where it saves it all for the kind of the last kind of 5 minutes of the movie. This is lots of kind of things peppered throughout the movie. Another positive thing I would say, I really liked the two main actors' relationship, because they just seem like a genuine couple, and a lot of that is down to the writing. Just for example, you know, when you see married couples, and I'm going to go off a bit of a tangent now. When we see married couples in movies, come on, let's be honest, it's not always the passion that you may have when you first meet someone. But you know, we kind of see these guys kind of go to bed and they're, oh, should we have sex? Nah, I'm tired. And you know, let's be honest, that's probably what couples do more often than not. So I kind of like a kind of realistic depiction of these guys basically. They just seemed very kind of natural to each other basically, and I really liked that their kind of relationship and the way they acted it as well. So I thought that was a good representation of a believable couple, and they seem like nice people as well. I have to say that all the locations looked fantastic. It does look like a kind of a genuinely sort of, you know, eerie kind of place to basically sort of have this film. And like I said, I think even though the effects are used sort of fairly minimally, they are there, but it doesn't kind of beat your head over it really. It's used well. Now I have to say, even though I would say this takes some cues from older movies, I feel the comparison that most people will make is going to be with The Conjuring, because it does have a very kind of similar beats to that in the way the story goes, without kind of saying too much. But if you've seen The Conjuring, I would say this is a kind of a comparable film. Maybe kind of just dialed down a little bit, because Conjuring is obviously a fairly high budget movie compared to this, but it was definitely a kind of a similar movie. Maybe not quite with the production values and that sort of thing. So if you enjoyed The Conjuring, then you may want to kind of watch this movie. It's not quite as out there, I would say, as The Conjuring. It's a little bit more kind of grounded, a little bit more lower key, but definitely I feel a comparable movie. And it does have a kind of a creepy atmosphere throughout this movie. Like I said, these guys made Dark Feed, and the way this story is structured, I feel is quite similar to Dark Feed. That they both are kind of slower build movies. If I had to pick out into a negative quickly, they both got intros which I feel could have been edited out, if I'm completely honest. But they're both kind of physically quite dark movies as well. So definitely you can see the kind of the story sort of techniques of these guys as well. So let's talk about the negatives first of all for a bit. So like I said, this movie has an intro which I feel doesn't benefit the movie. It looks cheap. The intro prologue of this movie really doesn't have much to do with the film, to be quite honest. And you can kind of cut that out. But I feel if you watch this film first of all, it looks cheap. And really, it doesn't have much to do with the story. It'll kind of make sense a little bit as you go sort of halfway through the film, but it's kind of to do with the voyeuristic aspect of the film, which to me wasn't really explained enough. Again, I won't go too much into it, but there is basically a voyeuristic thing that happens in this movie, or kind of event or something like that, basically. But you never really know why it's there. It doesn't seem to really serve the story in any way, to be honest with you. It's a device of what one of our characters uses, but I don't see how it was originally used, if that makes sense. Because it's hard without telling you the spoilers. But basically, yeah, there's this kind of, it's a storytelling device. I didn't feel it really fit with this kind of story, and like I said, the intro especially, it doesn't do this movie anyway, because it looks really cheap, and you kind of, when your first impressions, unfortunately, just forget about that intro. Anyway. And although this film is creepy, I wouldn't say it's scary. It definitely has a kind of unsettling atmosphere and a creepiness factor. But I never kind of got that, oh my god, you kind of covering your eyes and stuff like that. It doesn't go quite that far, whereas I feel it doesn't have this this feeling of you have to look away to be. It's definitely a creepy feeling, but I never felt it was a scary movie as such. And in regards to the acting, I like the kind of the primary actors, but there are some supporting cast here which I felt were a little weaker, to be honest with you. Not everyone, but there's a couple of people here whose performances where I didn't feel were quite as good, maybe as your kind of initial actors here. And like I said, this is not really a criticism, but there are kind of there isn't loads of kind of flashy effects here. He's fairly minimalistically, but that does well. But if you are looking for a film which is showing you kind of loads of flashy effects, and this is probably going to be a little disappointing for you. So I'm just warning you now. It definitely has a good atmosphere and is a well-made film, but don't be expecting like quite what you see on the screen, like things like The Conjuring, which did have kind of quite a lot that you sort of kind of visual representation on the screen of ghosts and things like that. So overall, I actually really enjoyed this movie. I definitely think it's, if you're like I said, you're a fan of these especially kind of 70s styles of haunted house movies, or early 80s haunted house movies, then you may want to check this one out. I would recommend it. If you're more of a modern audience and you kind of want everything kind of on screen all at once, then again you may feel this movie moves a little slowly for you, I feel. But overall, I would recommend this movie if you like a creepy horror film, which isn't going to kind of like, you can kind of watch with people who are less horror fans, I would say, and they'd probably find it scary. Anyway, so I'm going to give this movie a 7 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.